All right, good morning, everyone on YouTube. We'll be getting started in just a couple minutes. Everyone on YouTube, if you want to share where you're tuning in from in the world, we'd love to see where you're coming from. It's always super fun to see where everyone is right now as they tune in. Awesome. All right, and then, ladies, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Thumbs up, okay, good.
Yep, looks good.
Awesome, okay, cool. Start letting everybody in. Good morning, good morning. Hi, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mary.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Rajiv?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Doing well. Excited to have you here. Everyone, if you want to just help us make sure that the chat is working, share where you're tuning in from in the world. We'd love to see where you are at this morning. It's always fun. I'm in Palm Desert. Laura's in Puerto Rico. And I think Bailey, where are you? Are you on the East Coast or are you?
I am. I'm in Maryland.
Okay, so we're all over.
I am in Louisiana, New Orleans.
Awesome. Scotland, New York, Florida, Vancouver, Canada. Got people from all over. Canadians representing this morning. Awesome. Good to see you, Andrena. Good to see some familiar faces. Good morning. We'll get started in just a moment here. Alrighty. All right, it is 8:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Before we get started, I work to mute everybody. If you can just ensure that your microphone is muted, just to ensure the quality of this session as we get started, we would really appreciate that. And we'll have time for questions after this session and time for more open discussion. But for now, just keep yourself on mute. We really appreciate that. And we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Carly. I'm the Director of Community here at Learnit. If I haven't met you already, it's truly a pleasure. And I'm really excited to be joined by Laura Camila Rivera as our guest speaker today, as well as Bailey from the Foundation Fighting Blindness. We're thrilled to be partnering with them this month. I'll share a little bit more about Learnit and our partnership with Foundation Fighting Blindness and this program that we do before we get started, and then I'll hand it over to Laura. But if you are new to Learnit and this program, we host these weekly events every Friday morning at 8:30 a.m. As part of a community program, really to help us all upskill and learn new skills, really to thrive not only in our careers, but also just to help grow personally and professionally, and thrive in the economy of today and the economy of tomorrow. And so we're really grateful to work with really a whole wide variety of experts in different fields, both internally from our own instructor team and also guest speakers like Laura. And it's amazing to also get to partner with amazing nonprofit partners like the Foundation Fighting Blindness, who is our nonprofit partner for the months of October and November. And so Bailey, I want to invite you to share a little bit about the amazing work that you do at Foundation Fighting Blindness. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. Like Carly said, my name is Bailey Bostelman. I am the Director of Chapter Engagement for the Foundation Fighting Blindness. And we are so grateful to be partnering with the Learnit community to help raise awareness for these blinding diseases. A little bit about the foundation. So 50 years ago, this month exactly, the Foundation Fighting Blindness was organized to drive the research that will provide preventions, treatments, and cures for people affected with retinitis pigmentosa, age-related macular degeneration, Usher syndrome, and the entire spectrum of retinal degenerative diseases. Today, we are actually the world's leading private funder of retinal disease research, raising over $800 million to fund sight-restoring research. So together, we really are winning. So our goals are really to have no more parents being told that their children will become blind, no more young adults being told that they will go blind, and no more seniors being told that their final years are going to be living in the dark. So this is the time to be part of a winning team with us that will help millions of people. So we're winning thanks to our community of supporters like yourself and Learnit, volunteers, and donors. Our family of volunteers and leaders stand up for those impacted by blinding diseases. From day one, they share the latest research and advancements that help guide individuals through their personal journey. So today is actually a special day. Today we celebrate White Cane Day, which is in honor of the independence of people with blinding and visual impairments and the abilities that they are able to successfully to achieve even with their low vision. Today, be sure to also check out our website. There's an amazing story of a skateboarder. His name's Justin Bishop and his personal experience of living with retinitis pigmentosa. It's very inspirational. It is a wonderful description of somebody in the low vision community. But thank you all again for having us here today. And I'm excited for this wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much, Bailey, for being here. And we'll have more details on how you can stay engaged with Foundation Fighting Blindness after the session. Our speakers and everyone involved with this program has donated their time to be here. And so 100% of donations towards this session go to the Foundation Fighting Blindness. So we really do these sessions in the spirit of community and are really thrilled to have amazing partners like Bailey and Laura here to keep this program running. So with that being said, I want to introduce everyone to our speaker today, Laura Camila Rivera. Laura is the Director of Marketing and Communications at the Commonwealth Corporation, which is a workforce development nonprofit based in Boston. But amongst just her day job, Laura is also sits on the board and is an advisor for several organizations in Boston and really globally. She's the Director of Marketing at ALPFA, the Association of Latino Professionals for America. She's also the Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at the Young Nonprofit Professionals Network in Boston, and is really just a social media and email marketing sage. Laura, we first met Laura last year when she was working at another partner organization that we work with, and she helped us drive the highest attendance we've actually really ever had for one of our community events. So it's just an extremely thoughtful, strategic thinker when it comes to marketing, both on the personal side of how do you personally brand yourself, and how do you also market yourself as an organization, both on the for-profit and the nonprofit side. So we're in amazing hands and just super grateful that Laura is here with us today. So Laura, thank you. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Carly. Hi, everyone. I am coming in live from Puerto Rico, where I was born and raised before I moved out to Boston. I'm so excited to talk to you all today just about some different options that you have when it comes to marketing and branding yourself as an individual, as a professional, and even as an organization, right? So let me share my screen and get my slides up. There we go. So that we can talk about all of this. So I am currently, again, like I mentioned, working at Commonwealth Corporation as the Director of Marketing and Communications there. But on the side, I do also have my own organization called CAMI, which is Creative Automation and Marketing Innovations. And so a little bit about me, these are some of the organizations that I've worked with or partnered with most recently. I'm Constant Contact certified, really a huge fan of like community advocate work and working with like Latino professional communities. And workforce development as a whole. So really excited to be here and supporting all of you. Some of my passions are, I really love reading, coffee. I've been really upping my yoga practice lately. And I am a public arts enthusiast as well, because I believe that it is the most equitable way to access art. So just a little bit of context. And today we're going to be talking about branding. And so as you look at this screen, you'll recognize a lot of these brands and they'll even make you feel a certain way, right? Some of us are Microsoft versus Mac. Some of us prefer, Uber versus Lyft. And even just this icon, this image here, it's going to solicit an emotional response and a subconscious response in you that you might not even recognize, right? I sometimes feel really, really strongly about like McDonald's versus Burger King, and I don't really know why. And so that's why I started looking into this and trying to figure out what it is that branding really elicits in us, and how we can use the same branding tactics that larger organizations use to support ourselves professionally and personally in our careers. So that's how I discovered the brain on branding and what that means. So I'm a huge fan of like psychology and just talking about like the aspects of the brain and how they respond to these external like factors. And so there's 3 layers to the brain. And the one that we really base our branding the most out of is the reptilian brain. So branding can elicit a response in you that is an instinct and an urge based response. And then the way that you apply marketing and branding is then at the emotional, so mammalian brain, and then in the new brain, the thinking and planning brain. So really at the end of the day, they're all a huge factor in how you want to market yourself and brand yourself. But 90% of buying decisions are made subconsciously. So they don't even make it out of the reptilian brain. And then we also process visuals 60,000 times faster than text. So when you're really putting together your visual brand, it's what's going to really impact a lot of decision making that you never even really thought of. So how do we talk to each part of the brain to make sure that we are creating the brand and the story that we want to share? Let's talk about that. So lots of text on my slides because I want you guys all to have access to these afterwards and to be able to like refer to them. But the first thing we want to do is speak to the reptilian brain. And so the reptilian brain is the part of our brain that is concerned with like safety, food, desire. It's the part of the brain that responds to imagery the best as well. So oftentimes like a single more like powerful image is going to be a lot more impactful than like a lot of information, a lot of bullets, or even like a carousel of multiple images. That's an example of speaking to the reptilian brain. Then we want to speak to the mammalian brain and what that means. And really, this is where color comes in a lot. Although we like to think that we're very rational beings, a lot of our decisions are based off of a gut and emotional response. And that is where color can stimulate a variety of responses. That's why you see so many brands in the food industry industry that work with the colors red or yellow, because psychologically these colors are known to elicit a hunger response in us. So always take that into consideration when you're building out your brand, your color schemes, your palette, etc. And then speaking to the new brain is where we talk about building out just different resources for people to be able to compare things in a simple way. That's why websites have been putting up sites like us versus them, or you'll hear commercials talk about like us versus the leading brand. It's because the new brain wants to make decisions based on rational decisions, but based on rational information. But if you give the brain too much information, it's going to slow it down. So that's where we tend to create giving people the right amount of information in things like landing pages, or even just giving people like side-by-side comparisons so that you're like, ah, yes, I rationalize that really easily. And so all of these work together when you're putting together your brand and your story. So storytelling is one of the most powerful tools that we have when it comes to marketing and branding, because at the end of the day, you tell your story visually, you tell your story audibly, you tell your story by the way that you interact with other people. And that is what's going to elicit a response in the human brain that says like, A plus B equals C. Right? This good experience, this good color is going to lead to me having just a general preference for this human, for this entire entity of a person. They're just going to give me better vibes. And then you're going to feel that when you're making your decisions at a business level, like who you want to hire, who you want to partner with, who you want to bring into your organization, or who you even want to promote in an organization. And so that is called neural coupling. And it's where the listener's brain is going to reflect the activity of the speaker's brain and the speaker's activity. So we'll talk a little bit about neural coupling down the line, but I definitely want to talk about some different ways to develop an impactful brand so that neural coupling is a huge part of what is actually leading the decisions in your organization, in your community, etc. So a personal brand story is going to be the facts, the concept that encompasses all of the facts and feelings that you create as a brand, as a business, as an individual to the general public. You want to be able to control and manage your personal brand story so that you can take advantage and leverage it when you're presenting yourself in front of other people. This story can lead to like better job offers, better contacts in the industry, recognition, like thought leadership, and so much more. And so developing the story is a huge aspect to this impactful brand concept. So step one to that is going to be looking at what you already have in place. Everyone has a brand, whether it's intentional or not, you have a brand. So we want to start with a brand audit. Then we have your value proposition and determining what that is so that you can use it to create your story. And then it's establishing a presence. It's getting your story out there. So step one, let's perform a brand audit. What goes into a brand audit? Super basic. Who are you? What do you stand for? And what makes you different from your competition, right? What makes you different from the other person also angling for this promotion, or for the other like business also angling for the client? What makes you and what differentiates you and makes you the better decision? That's all a part of your like brand audit conversation starters, right? What makes you you? There's a few different pieces that fall into your brand. You can look at your values. You can look at your mission, your vision. You can look at your story, your background story. And then you also want to take into consideration your visual attributes like we talked about before. So even what filter you're using on your images is an aspect of your visual attributes. So the first step is to find out how other people see you. Like I mentioned, you already have a brand. Whether you curate it or whether it is just how people see you, your brand exists. So the first step is going through a brand audit by asking your friends, your coworkers, your colleagues, even your family members, like, what are a few words that describe me? And some other questions that you can ask are like, what are you known for? What are your strengths? What are your opportunities for growth and expansion? And which areas are you absolutely irreplaceable in? And where are you adding value? And these are going to be really fun conversations to have with some people and not so fun to have with other people. But it's important to take all of that into consideration. And quick pro tip, unsolicited feedback is often the most valuable feedback. Because when you ask someone to their face, what do you think of me? I don't think that they're going to be like, well, you're the worst. So you're going to have to take into consideration that there's always going to be a rose-colored glasses on when you're having these conversations with your friends and your family. But when that feedback comes in unsolicited, I think you can really trust that and really take that into consideration when you're building your story. I'm going to take a pause. I don't know if I can take any questions or if there's anything in the chat that we want to consider.
No, thanks, Laura. No questions in the chat so far, but I think one thing to reiterate too is like, if you're wanting to approach someone and ask for feedback in a professional setting, is there a way that you've done it in the past that you've seen work really well, or even just a simple phrase? Like, I don't know, I know I sometimes struggle with like the ask. So I'm wondering if you have any tips for that, of just, you know, how you've approached that, if it's during your one-on-one, kind of when you find it to be most natural or appropriate.
Absolutely. I think that it's always important to have these conversations as a part of your one-on-ones with your higher ups, with people who report to you. But it's also important to have these conversations outside of the workplace. So like, let's grab a coffee. Let's talk about where I can have opportunities for growth and where I can also help you develop that for yourself. So it's always about giving and taking. And when you actually open up a conversation and are more vulnerable, you're allowing other people to also be vulnerable with you. So I like to start with like, hey, I know that I want to do better in this area. I know that I thrive in this area. What do you think? And giving people the permission to speak to you openly over a latte.
Yeah. Love it. We also had a question come in from Alfred saying, when feedback is negative, like, can you elaborate on that? Like if you're receiving, maybe harder feedback and how you kind of incorporate that, or even maybe take it with a grain of salt, when receiving that. Yeah.
It's always important to, take that feedback in and consider it, but it's also important to know that you are and always will be who you are, right? And so there is going to be some feedback that you're going to receive that is going to be maybe like not someone's cup of tea, and that's okay. It's okay to not be on everyone's radar as like the best thing since sliced bread, but it's good to know who is saying these things so that you can develop what you want your target audience to be. So really it's who is feeling A, B, C negatively towards this. And maybe that's not the person I want to target with my marketing, with my brand. And if it is, how do we shift your brand so that you're also encompassing that audience? But you are not going to make everyone happy. And that is perfectly okay.
Thanks, Laura. That's perfect. I think that's all the questions we have right now, but I'll keep bubbling them up as well.
Absolutely. And so I am going to take the next step to talk about what a value proposition is. I like to consider how I'm being a value add in every situation I'm in. And so this is where you can kind of take a step back and figure out where it is that you are being a value add. I would say the first things first, now that you've established like, these are the goods, these are the bads. It's really, what is your consumer's pain point? Your consumer is going to be your client. It's going to be your boss. It's going to be the person who sits next to you at work. They are consuming your brand attributes and your marketing strategy on a day-to-day basis. So figure out what those pain points are for those individuals and where there is a gap that you can fill or that you are filling and what that gap is. That's always going to be, it's a difficult conversation to have with yourself to say like, this is what I can fill for someone and this is what I can't fill for someone. So I want to focus where I can fill and build my brand around that. Once you're able to bring your benefits to the table, you want to name them. And I would even recommend writing them down and say like, these are the attributes that I have. Those are good things that I bring to the table. And then you have to connect your value to your consumer's problem. Because at the end of the day, I can have 20 values, but my consumer only needs X, Y, and Z. right? And so if I'm focusing on speaking to all of these really great benefits that like I know I can bring to the table, I'm going to lose the opportunity to really speak to the consumer's like main issue. Like, what is it that my boss, my client, my neighbor really needs? And how can I hone into that when I'm talking about the benefits that I bring to the table? And then, of course, there's the really important part of differentiating yourself, because you may be able to bring a benefit to the table that fills a gap, but so can other people, so can other organizations. So what makes your benefit, what makes your solution the best option for someone? And it can be, I do it quicker, or it could be, I am more thorough, right? So really, really honing in on those strengths that we talked about earlier when you're trying to develop your list of benefits and what we call like value propositions. And then you'll want to test your value propositions. I've noticed that sometimes it changes over time, right? Like what the need is and what I can bring to the table changes over time. And you want to make sure that it works not only for the moment, but for the audience that you're trying to reach in that moment as well. So it's going to be a cycle. It's something that you should be consistently thinking about, and maybe check in with yourself every quarter. Like, are the pain points still the same? Are the benefits still the same? Am I differentiating myself? Is there a new player that came into this space that is using the same differentiation that I am? And so now I'm not as different. How do I elevate myself after that? And so the determining your value proposition is a cycle, a continuous cycle of testing and research and back to the start, right? But it is a huge part of building out your brand story. The anatomy of a good brand story at the end of the day is you will have some sort of struggle. This is your pain point, right? Some sort of action, which is where you come in. And then to have and really write down what that success is too. So, and when you're building out all of these like moving pieces, you have to keep a framework or else you're going to go crazy, right? So think struggle, action, success. What's the problem? What am I doing to fix it? Here are some examples of that working. And the most important part here, another pro tip, is simplicity. You don't want to add too much complexity. You don't want to keep adding layers. It's like, this is my benefit here and my benefit here, my benefit here, because you're going to lose people. At the end of the day, you're going to dilute your message. So always try to bring it back to struggle, action, success, so that you have all the essential information you need to bring someone through the story with you. All right. Then your next step. Oh, actually, I want to do the poll before this. Carly, can we toss up the poll? I want to see where everyone is when it comes to social media. What social media platforms are you on personally? And what social media platforms are you on professionally? Those are two different questions. So the poll has been launched. Looking forward to hearing, and you should be able to click multiple options because, you know, multifaceted, multiple social medias. I definitely have a folder on my phone for my like social media apps. So I'm seeing a lot of people come in with Instagram. I'm seeing a lot of people come in with Facebook. And I do have actually some information of what this looks like at a larger scale and for society as a whole, but it's always cool to see not only you as an individual where you are, but then where you are as a brand professionally. So we'll give it another 30 seconds here. All right, so I think we've got like a good amount of participation. I'd love to share with everyone what's coming in. Okay, cool. So Instagram is the most used tool personally, but it is not a very popular tool professionally. And so things like this are really good to know, really good to take into consideration when you're looking for a brand or when you're looking for an organization professionally. Where do you go? And that's where you want to be placed, right? That's where you want your brand to be the most like resonating. However, if you know that everyone is on Instagram personally, right? And everyone's scrolling through Instagram all the time, why aren't you on Instagram professionally? So let's take a look at these numbers as a whole. When it comes to establishing a presence. This is really recently updated. So as of like September 10th, these are the users on each of these social media platforms. So we're looking at Facebook as the highest used platform, but it was not the highest used platform in the responses we just got out of our poll. Why is that? If that's where your audience is, why aren't you there? YouTube, WhatsApp, Instagram, Messenger, and Messenger is a spinoff of Facebook, but it's now its own app as well. That is a platform that businesses need to be on now. And WhatsApp is also one that is always surprising to me because it's being used as a professional tool more and more. It's not just a messaging tool. And then, of course, you've got your TikToks, your Twitters, and your LinkedIn. But I saw a lot of professional involvement on LinkedIn, which is great. I always want to support that. But if you're only putting your professional brand on LinkedIn, you're missing out on a very, very good chunk of where everyone is actually receiving their information and where people are going to respond automatically with their reptilian brain to your brand. So on top of being everywhere, it's also important to be everywhere as an individual and as a company. So your company's branding and marketing strategy, I'm sure, is very great, really, useful, but it's not enough. At the end of the day, we are the most critical marketing tool, and our advocacy as individuals within an organization, as individuals representing an organization, is the most important marketing tool. It's called employee advocacy. And so what that looks like is posting things about information about specific products or campaigns, posting content that's helpful to people in your field of expertise, or even just a glimpse of your company culture. These are some of the really small things that you can do to really elevate and expand not only your brands, but your organization's brand. Any questions there? I know employee advocacy is one of my favorite tools to talk about. So.
Yeah, thanks so much, Laura. We had another question come in around, can you speak to what we are posting that could be, I guess, like, what are some things that are like great to be posting about the brand or things that could like harm the reputation of a brand, and kind of being aware of that?
Yeah, no,
kind of a tricky
absolutely.
question. But.
It's a tricky question, but it's also important to know that you as an individual cannot be cannot claim to speak on behalf of your whole organization. I think that's where it's important here. Being authentic and being yourself on your social media platforms and speaking to things as an individual on your social media platforms is incredibly important. Authenticity, and I'll speak to that in a little bit as well, is always going to be what people respond to the most, especially millennials, which are now the biggest buying power in the US, right? Like, how do we really resonate with them? It's us, it's authenticity. So I know that we sometimes are thinking like, oh, I don't want to post this, it might like represent my organization like in a different light. Keep in mind that you should not be the like sole proprietor or speaker of your organization, and you should be very clear about that when you're posting on social media. But you're allowed to have your own thoughts and opinions on your social media. It's just a matter of keeping these two brands, if you want to, separate, especially if you're afraid of being able to damage the reputation of a brand. Now, when you're combining your brand and your reputation with your organization's reputation, if you are a business owner, if you are a leader, then you definitely have to be mindful about what you're putting out there. And a lot of the times, again, it's the most important thing is authenticity. And so if you have true content to put out there, that's what's going to be a value add. If you're putting out like copy pastes, content that someone has pre-written for you, if you're putting out content that is so very clearly a marketing ploy on behalf of someone else, that's not going to resonate well with your audiences. I hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you. That's super helpful. This is actually an interesting question too, and then we can move on to, but Charles asks, if you're a brand that that is smaller or maybe like only ran by one person, I think this goes for even if on your personal branding, is it weird to speak in a we voice or kind of like a collective voice? So, that speaks even if you're recruiting people, or if you're just wanting to build a community, is it okay to use that collective voice?
That's a great question. I think it's super specific to what type of organization you're representing. Because if you're speaking to like your own personal identity as a brand, which is a common thing. If you are a coach, if you're a speaker, if you are an individual contractor, you could probably just use you. But I say I, right? But when you're speaking for a brand, even if it's a larger, like ideally a larger brand, but you're the only one speaking to it, you're the only one running it, you're the only one representing it, then I think it's perfectly fine to use like we and speak to that, because you're not talking about yourself, you're talking about this brand, we as a brand. And think about it this way: if your brand can expand, you can use we. But if your brand is just you, then use I, and that actually will create a higher level of authenticity as well.
Thanks, Laura.
All right, so let's look at some like last call tips and tricks, and then I really want to dive into whatever questions you might have. But these are some of like the go-to life-changing, brand-changing tips. First things first, engage with others. So word of mouth is the single most important ingredient in building a personal brand. And so you can't be speaking out in one direction. You need to have that to be be like a multi-directional conversation. Sorry, give me one second. You need to be able to have these conversations because at the end of the day, that authenticity and that communication in multiple directions is what your consumers are looking for and what they're going to respond to the most. And so if someone has a really good experience with just you responding to a comment on Instagram, or like with you, even if it's negative, positive feedback, you responding and saying like, thanks, you've been heard. That is actually going to turn into a huge advocate for you. And that's when someone's going to say like, listen, maybe I might not agree with necessarily what they posted or what they said here, but they cared, they responded, and I respect them for that. Then that flows right into authenticity. So being authentic is of the most important ways that you can really garner a following on socials, as well as like build your brand out. Millennials, like I mentioned, are the most powerful and influential consumer sector at the moment. And authenticity, when asked over and over again, authenticity is one of the main factors in a purchase. Or even just like hiring, in promoting, in any sort of decision, it's authenticity. It's, are you being honest? Are you being real? And are you like honestly being your full self with me? And you know what? If you can really fake authenticity, go for it. Like, that's great. I'm glad that you figured that out. But I've spent a lot of years working on this, and I have not been able to fake authenticity yet. So that's something that's really important. One of the greatest ways to really pursue your authenticity and to show that is by being consistent. If you are saying the sky is blue, the sky is blue, the sky is blue, the sky is blue over the next few months on social media, I'm going to really know, and I'm going to believe that you believe that the sky is blue. But if you're tossing out some information out there and then you're changing the way that you're communicating, you're changing the languages that you're using. That's why I always recommend developing your own language matrix and saying like, this is my opinion on X, Y, and Z. And I want that to continue to come out consistently through my brand. And it's about playing the long game. You can post 30 times in 1 week, and that's going to be less successful and less impactful than you posting 30 times in 2 months. That's what's going to really bring people to not just say, that's something that I'm interested in learning more about, or that's someone that I want to follow and gain some information about. It's also going to say like, this is going to be a value add for me consistently, not just this week. And then last, know your audience. And this is back to the conversation around like, who's going to be that person that is going to be the key audience for you. Some people are not going to vibe with your brand, and that's okay. They don't need to be your key audience. But when you are developing your key audience, and when you're trying to figure out who you're speaking to, you want to know the person who will pay you, who will hire you, who is the active decision maker. You want to know the person who influences that active decision maker. And then maybe that active decision maker isn't the one looking on social media for the next person that they want to work with, but the person who influences them can be. And then your supporters, who maybe at the end of the day is your family, your friends, your coworkers that don't have a say in any of the decisions that you want to like build your brand into. But they're going to share, they're going to like, they're going to talk about you. They're going to be that word of mouth asset. And it's going to get to that person who will pay or hire you, or that person who will influence that person who will pay or hire you. That's the audience you want to focus on. Some little tools that I want to highlight for consistency, for authenticity, and for your audience are things like Buffer, which is a social media scheduling tool. I use Buffer personally for organizations. I like to recommend Hootsuite. It's a more robust tool, but Buffer is really great for, it's a Chrome add-on. I can click on it and say I want to share this, and it'll schedule it onto my queue. And it allows me to not have to post 30 things at once. It'll post it out on intervals. Then there's tools like Grammarly, which are also really, really important, especially when it comes to authenticity and consistency. Honestly, you lose people if you've got misspellings all over your content. So definitely recommend implementing Grammarly. It can actually connect to your Google Chrome as well. And it can fix things you're writing on Facebook. Medium is a great tool for creating content. It's a blogging platform, and it's a great place for you to go on there, be authentic, create a following. And I would also recommend starting to develop your newsletter and your news lists. Those are going to be, email marketing is kind of where it's been at for many years. And while social media is a phenomenal tool, email marketing is still really holds the marketing sphere. And at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you are collecting information for the people who are your advocates so that you can continuously reach them. And that's going to be a tool like MailChimp or Constant Contact. So then Noam is a tool that you can use to figure out if your name, your brand, whatever it is that you're putting together has already been claimed on different social media platforms for that consistency. If you're going to be able to name yourself something on social media, you want to do so across the board. And so use this tool to check if the name that you've already had in mind, or the name with that right underscore and that extra number, or whatever it is that you want to do to differentiate yourself on socials, is available across the board. Then there's tools like WordTune. WordTune supports in rewriting content. So I can write something out that is my main message and then go on WordTune and essentially shuffle it so that it comes out in 10 different other ways. But it's still the same message. It's the core message. And then you're not sharing the same thing over and over again. People don't think, oh, I just read that, but they're still seeing that it resonates and is consistent across the board. And last, I also want to recommend Missing Letter, that if you connect it with your Medium or your MailChimp, it will actually automatically create campaigns for content that you're putting out there and help you schedule it over time. At the end of the day, you do not need to be at your computer, on your social media, on your email at all times to create consistency and to be authentic across the board. So that's it for me today. This is a little information about me and how you can connect with me. But I would love to answer any questions or if anyone has any thoughts that they want to share.
Laura, thanks so much. Just while people enter in any other questions they have or just kind of start thinking about them, I want to thank you. If you enjoyed today's session, just throw a little reaction in the chat. Would love to see your initial reactions to today's session. And I just want to thank you, Laura, for being here. We do have a couple questions coming up and Alfred asks, is there anything, any stories you can share of really big wins you've had when it comes to posting or even campaigns you've done either personally or org-wide professionally, or anything that you learned from that was maybe like a mistake. You're like, oh wow, okay, I wasn't totally authentic to myself, or any areas for growth or things that you can share professionally or personally that speak to that.
Absolutely. I think that we're all human and we all are going to organically make mistakes. But I think the biggest mistake, the only thing that's ever really backfired for me in a scenario has been not being authentic and trying to support something that maybe I believe in the core of it, but there are layers to it that I don't believe in, and not saying that, and not saying this is a great organization, this is a great mission to support, this is a great thing to support, but X, Y, and Z. Because at the end of the day, people are going to see through that, and they're going to see through your like support for something. And people might even start asking questions. I've had people reach out on social media and say, like, really, that's something you want to support? What about X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, you know what, you're right. I don't necessarily agree with X, Y, and Z, but that doesn't change my support for the main mission. Right. And so it is always about authenticity, you know, and being able to say, like, I am going to put this information out there, and then I'm going to stand by it, and I'm going to support this organization, or I'm going to support this cause. I don't know if that helps a little bit, Alfred.
Yes, thank you.
I'm looking at something here that speaks to having two different aspects of a business that feel a little more disparate. And you know what? That resonates with me a lot because I tend to work within the marketing space. And then I also tend to work within like diversity, equity, and inclusion spaces. So when you're thinking about being able to put two parts of your brand together, there is a lot of really great ways to do that. But the best way to do it is to integrate your thinking and integrate your brand and integrate your services. So at the end of the day, they both connect with me in the middle. And I believe that they are engaging with each other. So marketing needs to be addressed with a diversity lens. And diversity needs to be addressed with a communications and marketing mindset. And that's how you're going to be able to take two things that might seem really different to you and be able to bring them in together and create one brand for both. Because at the end of the day, the brand is you. The brand is what you bring to the table. Tiny Letter. I love Tiny Letter. Someone's asking about using Tiny Letter. I use it for personal like newsletter work. And so it allows me to really quickly throw together something and send it out to a few people. So I do recommend you go into Tiny Letter and sign up, subscribe, so that you can kind of receive like random ramblings from my brain. But it's a great tool for an individual brand. I wouldn't recommend it for a larger we type of brand. For that, I would expand and use something like MailChimp. How do we grow our following? Should we be following trends on social media, contests, post every day? If you have enough content to post every day, go for it. But you should be authentic with what you're posting. And so at the end of the day, I like to think of posting every day as like a sharing every day, not posting every day. I don't have enough content to share with everyone every day, a little bit of what I work on, a little bit of what I do. I can do that maybe like once a week, twice a week. But what I do want to do is elevate other organizations, elevate other writers, elevate other content creators. And I can use that to post every day and grow my following. And not only is that supporting other organizations that I believe in and sharing things that I believe in, I also try to tag these individuals so that they see it and they can share it on their platforms. And that's actually how you grow the most, is someone saying, oh, I follow this person. They shared something from someone else that I thought was really interesting. I'm going to go follow them now. I tend to like, for an individual brand, you can follow trends, you can do the challenges, you can do all of that work, but it is going to be time consuming. So the question is, what do you want to bring to the table? What do you want to like promote the most? Focus on the things that that are your value adds and your value proposition, and post those and work within those. And then for everything else, for the posting every day, for the posting every week, it's about sharing and community building. What platforms and tactics will be the next hot wave? That's a great question. I'm currently coming to you live from Puerto Rico, and I am seeing crazy movement with like the WhatsApp and the messenger tools, because again, people want your brand to be communicating with them. They don't want that to be a one-sided conversation, just me tweeting at you, just me posting at you every day. How do you bring your brand into a more conversational platform? And I mean, that doesn't mean that you have to be there messaging every single person every day. There are tools within the messengers, the WhatsApp, and those platforms that allow you to automate responses, that allow you to say like, hey, I can't take a look at this right now, but I do want to send you this, or I want to invite you to this event that we're hosting. Thanks for asking this question. Would love to have you ask this question live. And so using these tools and these tactics to really bring in a rolling conversation and always be connecting with your following. I think that's going to be where everyone's leaning towards. And that's why we use tools like Drift, which is like a chatbot type of concept. People want to engage. We're tired of just receiving and receiving. I hope that helps, Charles.
Thank you, Laura.
Amazing. I would love to connect with all of you on LinkedIn. I'm seeing that come through in a direct message, but I would want to offer that to everybody at the table. I think that it's a really, really valuable tool. It's where I post a lot of the work that we're doing professionally and that I work on with my organization, that I work through with Cami. So definitely find me on LinkedIn under Laura Camila Rivera. And if you send me a message, I will definitely accept.
Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you everyone for the really thoughtful questions. We really appreciate it. I also want to highlight too that Laura is an amazing part of our community offsite too. So another way to just connect with her too, and LinkedIn obviously. But the recording, we've had a couple questions. I've had a couple of chats come through of recording and slides, and for our folks on YouTube, the recording of this session, and Laura has also graciously provided her slides, which will be posted in our community called Offsite by Learnit. So I'll go ahead and just share that as well now, so that if anyone wants to please scan in and check out Offsite as well, you can. But as always, it's offsitebylearnit.com, and you can find us there. And you can also reach out to Laura on her website as well. Talk about being authentic. I'm having major trouble sharing my slides right now, but hopefully everyone can see my slides right now. But yeah, we'll have the access to recording there. We also have live instructor help and more Ask the Expert sessions. So really want to thank Laura for being here. If you do have any closing questions, we do also have time. I also, while you're thinking about that, we have a quick video from Foundation Fighting Blindness, and I want to reiterate just our gratitude to Foundation Fighting Blindness for the incredible work they're doing as well. So I'll go ahead and share the video sharing their message and one of their incredible stories. And supporting some of the work they've done as well. So give me one moment here. All right, give me 1 second. Major struggles today. Can everyone see my screen and hear me? Just give me a little thumbs up.
Between business life, social life, and her best bud Loki, Beverly has a lot to focus on, especially while fighting Stargardt, a blinding retinal disease that starts during childhood and gets worse over time. But despite her vision loss, she's hopeful because she knows she's not fighting alone. For 50 years, the Foundation Fighting Blindness has funded research into treatments and cures for blinding diseases, providing real hope to those fighting vision loss. And our nationwide community of local chapters provides networking and support for people with vision loss, as well as their loved ones. Because the best way to fight against blinding diseases is to fight together. And for Beverly, winning the fight means focusing on what's closest to her. The Foundation Fighting Blindness. Together, we're winning. Learn more about how you can help us end blinding diseases at fightingblindness.org.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I think we still have Bailey here as well for a couple minutes. So if anyone has any questions, any last final questions for Laura or Bailey, we'll stick around for about 2 to 3 more minutes. So feel free to come off mute if you have any questions. We'd love to hear from you.
Laura, may I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just I do a lot of work in equity and inclusion work and justice work. As a BIPOC individual, as a woman, how do you see what you've shared with us having to be tweaked or finessed, or just how do you present yourself with this knowledge?
That is a really great question. So I think that the most important part of being a woman of color, person of color that is bringing these conversations to the table is to manage your own story, because people are going to impose on you their thoughts, their stereotypes, and even just like their unconscious bias based on what they've experienced before or based on what they've been taught before. And so it is so important to take a hold of your brand and your story and make sure that you're the one telling it. Because if not, someone is going to tell it for you.
And I have a question. So where would you begin, Laura? As far, like, if you're starting and you're like, I want to begin to brand myself, what's the starting point? Where would you suggest that someone really start to really brand themselves? If they're like just out there, like, I don't know what to do. This is something that I'm interested in trying, but I'm just I'm overwhelmed. Like, for instance, I am, at mid-age now. I'm in the process of trying to grow and develop a business. I'm in direct sales, direct marketing, but I'm also working full time. But I'm also in the place of expanding my career. So if you're just at a starting place, what would you suggest?
That's great. I'm so glad that you're thinking about this now and like taking action on this now. I'm gonna throw it back to like, your brand exists. Your brand is there. The way that people perceive you and the relationships that people have of you, that's part of your brand, right? Yep. So it's figuring out what is already in place and if it's representing you the way that you want it to. And then with that, I would recommend, you're developing your story, you're building out like whatever resources and assets that you have based on what's already there. And then you have to go and find all of the social media platforms and make all of the accounts and make sure that you're streamlining your name across the board. And even if you're not ready to speak about your brand, you're going to want to like claim those names. And so that's why tools like Noam, or there's another one called Name Check, right? To say like, this is the brand that I want to bring to the table. How can I go on Twitter? How can I go on Facebook? How can I go on YouTube? How can I go on LinkedIn and make sure that I am streamlining that brand? Because as you figure your story out, as you figure out like your value proposition, your branding and everything, what you don't want to lose out on is the opportunity to have like your name be what you want your name to be.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Laura, I have a question. This is Robin. You mentioned a lot that the biggest buying cohort is millennials right now, and that's great. That's true, and that's really not my market. I work with mostly people in transition. I have a variety of situations, but I help people recreate homes, say perhaps after they're divorced, or it could be a couple coming together, not as 20-year-olds. Starting a home from scratch, but combining households. So I bring my interior design skills, green building and feng shui, all to that. So I wear a lot of hats, but my heart is working with people who are creating home. So that's a market that I think is less likely to be using some of the hottest new social marketing platforms, but I know a lot of my peers, I would say people between, 40 and maybe up to 70 would be my market.
Okay. No, that's a really good point. I think that I'm going to challenge you a little bit and say that millennials aren't 20. Right now, millennials are like 35 and around that age. And so they will probably be combining households right now. They could be on their like in that type of space in their life as well. So definitely like, let's take a look at like millennials as a larger market than that. But for an older market, for a market who is more like not on TikTok right now, for example, maybe not on Snapchat as their primary resource, that's where email marketing comes in. Email marketing, social media is going to be amazing, and it's going to continue to scale, and it's going to continue to impact. But email marketing is still, I would say, 60 to 70% of like the most effective marketing tools.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting because time keeps going by, but I think of millennials as being much younger, but yeah, somebody in their mid 30s, they actually could be going into a second marriage and combining households. They're combining two families, and which becomes just potentially, I mean, it can be kind of a minefield to navigate that territory of creating a home that works for everybody. But you're right, that could be happening with people easily in their 30s.
Absolutely. And again, from millennials, from even still talking about like Gen X, Gen Z, the whole, everyone, email marketing is still one of the most effective tools to reach people and build consistent relationships with people.
Except that then they have to be on my email list, so they still have to find me someplace first.
And that's how it works with social media too. They still have to find you, right? So how are you bringing people, that's called lead generation, right? How are you bringing people to your list, and how are you bringing, like, where are you putting your list so that it's incredibly accessible? Right. And that can look like writing content, and then at the bottom of your content saying like, if you like this, sign up for my my email newsletter, right? Like I just asked all you to do, right? If you enjoyed talking about this, if you enjoyed being a part of this conversation, sign up for that email list. And that's going to be your call to action at the end of the day, because people can, again, follow you on Instagram, follow you on LinkedIn, but that's like one touch base. Email marketing is still going to be the most streamlined, one of the most effective tools when it comes to communicating with people. So your goal should be, give me your email.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Actually, interestingly, I just responded to an email newsletter where she shared part of her personal story, which was water damage in her home. And so I responded, she runs a speakers bureau for women speakers. So it's totally different thing, but we have a relationship because those emails come in every week.
Yeah.
So especially during COVID when we're not seeing each other in person. So
absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Thank you, Laura. I want to be conscious of everyone's time too, and just really thank everyone for staying around and your thoughtful questions. If you do want to continue the conversation, or you do have more questions for Laura, I'll email out your information to everybody after this. But please do reach out to us via LinkedIn. We'll send everything out via email. And if you're already a member of Offsite, it'll be in there as well with follow-up resources. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And we look forward to seeing you hopefully next week. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Laura. You're the best. Yeah, throw up a little love in the reactions. Awesome. All right. Thank you. Take care. Thanks, Bailey. Thanks, Laura.
Goodbye.